Hello and welcome to Classical Titerature, the show that is the pinnacle of knightly virtue. So the last time we checked in with King Arthur and his court, we found out how Merlin got imprisoned forever inside of a tomb by a 15-year-old, which, honestly, is a bad look. Then we found out how King Arthur nearly died at the contrivances of Queen Morgana Le Fay, who, in the end, was able to steal the sheath of Excalibur and hide it away forever. This time we will begin part 2 of the Book of Worthies, the story of Sir Pellias. Here followeth the story of Sir Pellias, surnamed by many the Gentle Knight, for Sir Pellias was of such a sort that it was said of him that all women loved him without disadvantage to themselves, and that all men loved him to their great good advantage. Wherefore, when in the end he won for his beloved that beautiful Lady of the Lake, who was one of the chiefest damsels of Faery, and when he went to dwell as Lord Paramount in that wonderful habitation which no other mortal than he and Sir Launcelot of the Lake had ever beheld, then were all men rejoiced at his great good fortune, albeit all the court of King Arthur grieved that he had departed so far away from them, never to return again. So I believe that you will have pleasure in reading the history of the things concerning Sir Pellias, hereafter written for your edification. Chapter 1st. How Queen Guinevere went a-maying, and of how Sir Pellias took upon him a quest on her behalf. Now it befell upon a pleasant day in the springtime that Queen Guinevere went a-maying with a goodly company of knights and ladies of her court. And among those knights were Sir Pellias, and Sir Geraint, and Sir Dinadan, and Sir Aglaval, and Sir Agravaine, and Sir Constantine of Cornwall, and sundry others, so that the like of that court was hardly to be found in all the world, either then, or before, or since. The day was exceedingly pleasant with the sunlight all yellow, like to gold, and the breeze both soft and gentle. The small birds they sang with very great joy, and all about there bloomed so many flowers of divers sorts, that the entire meadows were carpeted with their tender green. So it seemed to Queen Guinevere that it was very good to be abroad in the field and beneath the sky at such a season. Now as the queen and her court walked in great joy among the blossoms, one of the damsels attendant upon the Lady Guinevere cried out of a sudden, "Look! Look! Who is that cometh yonder?" Thereupon Queen Guinevere lifted up her eyes, and she beheld that there came across the meadows a damsel riding upon a milk-white palfrey, accompanied by 3 pages clad in sky-blue raiment. That damsel was also clad entirely in azure, and she wore a finely wrought chain of gold about her neck, and a fillet of gold about her brows, and her hair, which was as yellow as gold, was wrapped all about with bands of blue ribbon embroidered with gold. And one of the pages that followed the damsel bare a square frame of no very great size, and that the frame was enveloped and covered with a curtain of crimson satin. Now when the queen beheld that goodly company approaching, she bade one of the knights attendant upon her for to go forth and meet the damsel, and the knight who went forth in obedience to her command was Sir Pellias. So when Sir Pellias met the damsel and her 3 pages, he spake to her in this wise: "Fair damsel, I am commanded by yonder lady for to greet you, and to crave of you the favour of your name and purpose." "Sir knight," said the damsel, "I do perceive from your countenance and address that you are some lord of very high estate and of great nobility. Wherefore I will gladly tell to you that my name is Parcenet, and that I am a damsel belonging to the court of a certain very high dame who dwelleth at a considerable distance from here, and who is called the Lady Ettard of Grosmesnil. Now I come hitherward desiring to be admitted into the presence of Queen Guinevere. Accordingly, if you can tell me whereabout I may find that noble lady, I shall assuredly be very greatly beholden upon you." Ha, lady, quoth Sir Pellias, thou shalt not have very far to go to find Queen Guinevere, for behold, yonder she walketh, surrounded by her court of lords and ladies. Then the damsel said, I prithee bring me unto her. So Sir Pellias led Parcenet unto the queen, and Queen Guinevere received her with great graciousness of demeanour, saying, Damsel, what is it that ye seek of us? Lady, quoth the damsel, I will tell you that very readily. The Lady Ettard, my mistress, is considered by all in those parts where she dwelleth to be the most beautiful lady in the world. Now of late there hath come such a report of your exceeding beauty that the Lady Ettard hath seen fit for to send me hitherward to see with mine own eyes if that which is recorded of you is soothly true. And indeed, lady, now that I stand before you, I may not say that you are the fairest dame that ever mine eyes beheld, unless it be the Lady Ettard aforesaid. Then Queen Guinevere laughed with great mirth, and she said, It appears to me to be a very droll affair that thou shouldest have travelled so great a distance for so small a matter. Then she said, Tell me, damsel, what is that thy page beareth so carefully wrapped up in that curtain of crimson satin? Lady, quoth the damsel, it is a true and perfect likeness of the Lady Ettard, who is my mistress. Then Queen Guinevere said, Show it to me. Upon this, the page who bore the picture dismounted from his palfrey, and, coming to Queen Guinevere, he kneeled down upon one knee, and uncovered the picture so that the queen and her court might look upon it. Thereupon they all beheld that the picture was painted very cunningly upon a panel of ivory, framed with gold and inset with many jewels of divers colours. And they saw that it was the picture of a lady of such extraordinary beauty that all they who beheld it marvelled thereat. Hey, damsel, quoth Queen Guinevere, thy lady is indeed graced with wonderful beauty. Now if she doth in sooth resemble that picture, then I believe that her like to loveliness is not to be found anywhere in the world. Upon this Sir Pellias spake out and said, Not so, lady, for I do protest, and am willing to maintain my words with the peril of my body, that thou thyself art much more beautiful than that picture. Hey day, sir knight, quoth the damsel Parcenet. It is well that thou dost maintain that saying so far away from Grantmesnil. For at that place is a certain knight, hight Sir Engamore of Malverat, who is a very strong knight indeed, and who maintaineth the contrary to thy saying, in favour of the Lady Ettard, against all comers who dare to encounter him. Then Sir Pellias kneeled down before Queen Guinevere, and set his palms together. Lady, he said, I do pray thee of thy grace that thou wilt so far honour me as to accept me for thy true knight in this matter. For I would fain essay an adventure in thy behalf, if I have thy permission for to do so. Wherefore, if thou grantest me leave, I will straightway go forth to meet this knight of whom the damsel speaketh, and I greatly hope that when I find him I shall cause his overthrow to the increasing of thy glory and honour. Then Queen Guinevere laughed again with pure merriment. Sir, quoth she, it pleases me beyond measure that thou shouldest take so small quarrel as this upon thee in my behalf. For, if so be, thou dost assume so small a quarrel, then how much more wouldest thou take a serious quarrel of mine upon thee? Wherefore I do accept thee very joyfully for my champion in this affair. So go thou presently and arm thyself in such a way as may be fitting for this adventure. Lady, said Sir Pellias, if I have thy leave, I will enter into this affair clad as I am, for I entertain hopes that I shall succeed to winning armour and accoutrement upon the way, in which case this adventure will be still more to thy credit than it would otherwise be. At this the queen was very much pleased that her knight should undertake so serious an adventure, clad only in holiday attire. Wherefore she said, Let it be as thou wouldest have it. Thereupon she bade her page, Florian, for to go and fetch the best horse that he might obtain for Sir Pellias, and Florian, running with all speed, presently returned with a noble steed, so black of hue that I believe there was not a single white hair upon him. Then Sir Pellias gave adieu to Queen Guinevere and her merry May court, and they gave him adieu and great acclaim, and thereupon he mounted his horse and rode away with the damsel Parcenet and the 3 pages clad in blue. Now when these had gone some distance, the damsel Parcenet said, Sir, I know not thy name or thy condition, or who thou art. Unto this Sir Pellias said, Damsel, my name is Pellias, and I am a knight of King Arthur's Round Table. At that Parcenet was very much astonished, for Sir Pellias was held by many to be the best knight at arms alive, saving only King Arthur and King Pellinore. Wherefore she cried out, Messire, it will assuredly be a very great honour for Sir Engamore to have to do with so famous a knight as thou. Unto this Sir Pellias said, Damsel, I think there are several knights of King Arthur's Round Table who are better knights than I. But Parcenet said, I cannot believe that to be the case. Then after a while Parcenet said to Sir Pellias, Messire, how wilt thou get thyself armour for to fight Sir Engamore? Maiden, said Sir Pellias, I do not know at these present, or I shall provide my armour. But before the time cometh for me to have to do with Sir Engamore, I have faith that I shall find armour fit for my purpose. For thou must know that it is not always the defence that a man weareth upon his body that bringeth him success, but more often it is the spirit that uplifteth him unto his undertaking. Then Parcenet said, Sir Pellias, I do not believe it is often the case that a lady hath so good a knight as thou for to do battle in her behalf. To which Sir Pellias said cheerfully, Damsel, when thy time cometh, I wish that thou mayst have a very much better knight to serve thee than I. Sir, quoth Parcenet, such a thing as that is not likely to befall me. At the which Sir Pellias laughed with great lightness of heart. Then Parcenet said, Hey ho, I would that I had a good knight for to serve me. To this Sir Pellias made very sober reply, Maiden, the first one that I catch I will give unto thee for thy very own. Now wouldest thou have him fair, or dark, or short, or tall? For if thou wouldest rather him short and fair, I will let the tall dark one go. But if thou wouldest have him tall and dark, I would let go the other sort. Then Parcenet looked very steadily at Sir Pellias, and she said, I would have him about as tall as thou art, and with the same colour of hair and eyes, and with a straight nose like unto thine, and with a good wit such as thou hast. Alas, said Sir Pellias, I would that thou hadst told me this before we had come so far from Camelot, for I could easily have got thee such a knight at that place. For they have them there in such plenty that they keep them in wicker cages, and sell them too for a farthing. Whereat Parcenet laughed very cheerfully, and said, Then Camelot must be a very wonderful place, Sir Pellias. So with very merry discourse they journeyed upon their way with such great joy and good content, taking much pleasure in the springtime and the pleasant meadows wherein they travelled, being without care of any sort, and heart full of cheerfulness and goodwill. That night they abided at a very quaint, pleasant hostelry that stood at the outskirts of the forest of Usk. And the next morning they departed betimes in the freshness of the early day, quitting that place and entering into the forest shadows. Now after they had travelled a considerable distance in that forest, the damsel Parcenet said to Sir Pellias, Sir, do you know what part of the woods this is? Nay, said Sir Pellias. Well, said Parcenet, this part of the woodland is sometimes called Roy, and is sometimes called the Forest of Adventure. For I must tell you it is a very wonderful place, full of magic of sundry sorts. For it is said that no knight may enter into this forest but some adventure shall befall him. Damsel, said Sir Pellias, that which thou tellest me is very good news, for maybe, if we should fall in with some adventure at this place, I may then be able to obtain armour suitable for my purpose. So they entered the forest of adventure forthwith, and then travelled therein for a long way, marvelling greatly at the aspect of that place into which they were come. For the forest was very dark and silent, and wonderfully strange, and altogether different from any other place that they had ever seen. Wherefore it appeared to them that it would not be at all singular if some extraordinary adventure should befall them. So after they had travelled in this wise for a considerable pass, they came of a sudden out of those thicker parts of the woodland, to where was an opening of considerable extent. And there they beheld before them a violent stream of water that flowed very turbulently, and with great uproar of many noises. And they saw that by the side of the stream of water there was a thorn tree, and that underneath the thorn tree was a bank of green moss, and that upon the bank of moss there sat an aged woman of a very woeful appearance. For that old woman was extraordinarily withered with age, and her eyes were all red, as though with a continental weeping of rheum. And many bristles grew upon her cheeks and her chin, and her face was covered with such a multitude of wrinkles that there was not any place which was free from wrinkles. Now when that old woman beheld Sir Pellias and Parcenet and the three pages approaching where she sat, she cried out in a loud voice, Sir, wilt thou not bear me over this water upon thy horse? For lo, I am very old and feeble, and may not cross this river by myself. Then Parcenet rebuked the old woman, saying, Peace, be still. Who art thou to ask this noble knight for to do thee such a service as that? Then Sir Pellias was not pleased with Parcenet, wherefore he said, Damsel, thou dost not speak properly in this matter, for that which beseemeth a true knight is to give succour unto any one soever who needeth his aid. For King Arthur is the perfect looking-glass for knighthood, and he hath taught his knights to give succour unto all those who ask succour of them, without regarding their condition. So saying, Sir Pellias dismounted from his horse, and lifted the old woman up upon the saddle thereof. There he himself mounted once more, and straightway rode into the ford of the river, and so came across the torrent, with the old woman in safety to the other side. And Parcenet followed him, marvelling very greatly at his knightliness, and the three pages followed her. Now when they had reached the other side of the water, Sir Pellias dismounted with intent to aid the old woman to alight from the horse. But she waited not for his aid, but immediately leaped down very lightly from where she was. And lo, Sir Pellias beheld that she whom he had thought to be only an aged and withered beldame was, in truth, a very strange, wonderful lady of extraordinary beauty. And greatly marvelling, he beheld that she was clad in apparel of such a sort as neither he nor any who were there had ever beheld before. And because of her appearance he was aware that she was not like any ordinary mortal, but that she was doubtless of enchantment. For he perceived that her face was of a wonderful clearness, like to ivory for whiteness, and that her eyes were very black and extraordinarily bright, like unto two jewels set into ivory. And he perceived that she was clad all in green from head to foot, and that her hair was long and perfectly black, and like to fine silk for softness and for glossiness. And he perceived that she had about her neck a collar of opal stones and emeralds, inset into gold, and that about her wrists were bracelets of finely wrought gold, inset with opal stones and emeralds. Wherefore, from all these circumstances, he knew that she must be fay. For thus was the Lady Nemoun of the lake, and so had she appeared unto King Arthur, and so did she appear unto Sir Pellias and those who were with him. So beholding the wonderful magical quality of that lady, Sir Pellias kneeled down before her and set his hands together, palm to palm. But the Lady of the Lake said, Sir, why dost thou kneel to me? Lady, quoth Sir Pellias, because thou art so wonderfully strange and beautiful. Messire, said the Lady of the Lake, thou hast done a very good service to me, and art, assuredly, a very excellent knight. Wherefore arise and kneel no longer. So Sir Pellias arose from his knees and stood before her, and he said, Lady, who art thou? To which she made reply, I am one who holdeth an exceedingly kind regard toward King Arthur and all his knights. My name is Nimue, and I am the chiefest of those ladies of the lake whom thou mayest have heard tell. I took upon me that form of a sorry old woman for to test thy knightliness, and lo, I have not found thee amiss in worthy service. Then Sir Pellias said, Lady, thou hast assuredly done me great favour in these. Upon that the Lady of the Lake smiled upon Sir Pellias very kindly, and she said, Sir, I have a mind to do with thee a greater favour than that. Therewith, so saying, she immediately took from about her neck that collar of opal stones, of emeralds and gold, and hung it about the shoulders of Sir Pellias, so that it hung down upon his breast with a very wonderful glory of variegated colours. Keep this, she said, for it is of a very potent magic. Upon that she vanished from the sight of those who were there, leaving them astonished and amazed beyond measure at what they had befallen. Upon that she vanished instantly from the sight of those who were there, leaving them astonished and amazed beyond measure at what had befallen. And Sir Pellias was like one who was in a dream, for he wist not whether that which he had beheld was a vision, or whether he had seen it with his waking eyes. Wherefore he mounted upon his horse in entire silence, as though he knew not what he did, and likewise in entire silence he led the way from that place. Nor did any of those others speak at that time. Only after they had gone a considerable distance, Parcenet said, speaking in a manner of fear, Sir, that was a very wonderful thing that befell us. To which Sir Pellias said, Yea, maiden. Now, that necklace which the Lady of the Lake had hung about the neck of Sir Pellias possessed such a virtue that whosoever wore it was beloved of all those who looked upon him. For the collar was enchanted with that particular virtue, but Sir Pellias was altogether unaware of that circumstance, wherefore he only took joy to himself because of the singular beauty of the jewel which the Lady of the Lake had given him. Chapter 2nd. How Sir Pellias overcame a Red Knight, hight Sir Adrasack, and of how he liberated 22 captives from that knight's castle. Now after that wonderful happening, they journeyed continuously for a great while, nor did they pause at any place until they came, about an hour after the prime of the day, to a certain part of the forest where charcoal burners were plying their trade. Here Sir Pellias commanded that they should draw rein and rest for a while. So they dismounted for to rest and to refresh themselves, as he had ordained that they should do. Now, as they sat there refreshing themselves with meat and drink, there came of a sudden from out of the forest a sound of great lamentation and of loud outcry, and almost immediately there appeared from the thickets, coming into that open place, a lady in woeful array, riding upon a pied palfrey. And behind her rode a young squire, clad in colours of green and white, and seated upon a sorrel horse. And he also appeared to be possessed of great sorrow, being in much disarray and very downcast of countenance. And the lady's face was all beswollen and inflamed with weeping, and her hair hung down upon her shoulders, with neither net nor band for to stay it in place, and her raiment was greatly torn by the brambles, and much stained with forest travel. And the young squire who rode behind her came with a drooping head and a like woeful disarray of apparel, his cloak dragging behind him and made fast to his shoulder by only a single point. Now when Sir Pellias beheld the lady and the squire in such sad estate, he immediately arose from where he sat and went straightway to the lady, and took her horse by the bridle, and stayed it where it was. And the lady looked at him, yet saw him not, being altogether blinded by her grief and distraction. Then Sir Pellias said to her, Lady, what ails thee that thou sorrowest so greatly? Whereunto she made reply, Sir, it matters not, for thou canst not help me. How ye know that? Said Sir Pellias. I have a very good intention for to aid thee, if it be possible for me to do so. Then the lady looked more narrowly at Sir Pellias, and she perceived him as though through a mist of sorrow. And she beheld that he was not clad in armour, but only in a holiday attire of fine crimson cloth. Wherefore she began sorrowing afresh, and that in great measure, for she deemed that here was one who could give her no aid in her trouble. Wherefore she said, Sir, thy intentions are kind, but how canst thou look to give me aid, when thou hast neither arms nor defences for to help thee in taking upon thee such a quarrel? But Sir Pellias said, Lady, I know not how I may aid thee until thou tellest me of thy sorrow. Yet I have good hope that I may serve thee, when I shall know what it is that causes thee such a disorder of mind. Thereupon, still holding the horse by the bridle, he brought the lady forward to that place where Parson still sat beside the napkin spread with food, with which they had been refreshing themselves. And when he had come to that place, he, with all gentleness, constrained the lady for to dismount from her horse. Then, with equal gentleness, he compelled her to sit down upon the grass and to partake of the food. And when she had done so, and had drunk some of the wine, she found herself to be greatly refreshed, and began to take to herself more heart of grace. Thereupon, beholding her so far recovered, Sir Pellias again demanded of her what was her trouble, and besought her that she would open her heart unto him. So, being encouraged by his cheerful words, she told to Sir Pellias the trouble that had brought her to that pass. Sir Knight, she said, that place where I dwell is a considerable distance from here. Sir Knight, she said, that place where I dwell is a considerable distance from this. Thence I came this morning, with a very good knight, hight Sir Brandemere, who is my husband. We have been married but for a little over 4 weeks, so that our happiness until this morning was as yet altogether fresh with us. Now this morning Sir Brandemere would take me out a-hunting at the break of day, and so we went forth with a branchet of which my knight was wonderfully fond. So, coming to a certain place in the forest, there started up of a sudden from before us a doe, which same the branchet immediately pursued with great vehemence of outcry. Thereupon I and my lord and this squire followed thereafter with very great spirit and enjoyment of the chase. Now when we had followed the doe and the hound for a great distance, the hound pursuing the doe with a great passion of eagerness, we came to a certain place where we beheld before us a violent stream of water, which was crossed by a long and narrow bridge. And we beheld that upon the other side of the stream there stood a strong castle with 7 towers, and that the castle was built up upon the rocks in such a way that the rocks and the castle appeared to be altogether like one rock. Now, as we approached the bridge aforesaid, lo, the portcullis of the castle was lifted up, and the drawbridge was let fall very suddenly and with a great noise, and there immediately issued forth from out of the castle a knight clad altogether in red. And all of the trappings and the furniture of his horse were likewise of red, and the spear which he bore in his hand was of ash wood, painted red. And he came forth very terribly, and rode forward, so that he presently stood at the other end of that narrow bridge. Thereupon he called out aloud to Sir Brandemere, my husband, saying, Whither wouldest thou go, Sir Knight? And unto him Sir Brandemere made reply, Sir, I would cross this bridge, for my hound, which I love exceedingly, hath crossed here in pursuit of a doe. Then that red knight cried out in a loud voice, Sir Knight, thou comest not upon this bridge but at thy peril. For this bridge belongeth unto me, and whosoever would cross it must first overthrow me, or else he may not cross. Now my husband, Sir Brandemere, was clad at that time only in a light raiment, such as one might wear for hunting or for hawking. Only that he wore upon his head a light bascinet enwrapped with a scarf, which I had given him. Nevertheless, He was so great of heart that he would not abide any challenge, such as that the Red Knight had given unto him. Wherefore, bidding me and this squire, whose name is Pontefart, to remain upon the farther side of the bridge, he drew his sword and rode forward to the middle of the bridge, with intent to force a way across if he was able to do so. Whereupon, seeing that to be his intent, the Red Knight, clad all in complete armor, cast aside his spear, and drew his sword, and rode forward to meet my knight, so that they met in the middle of the bridge. And when they had thus met, that Red Knight lifted him up in his stirrup, and smote my husband, Sir Brandemere, upon the crown of his bascinet with his sword. And I beheld the blade of the Red Knight's sword, that it cut through the bascinet of Sir Brandemere, and deep into his brain-pan, so that the blood ran down upon the knight's face in great abundance. Then Sir Brandemere straightway fell down from his horse, and lay as though he were gone dead. Having thus overthrown him, that Red Knight dismounted from his horse, and lifted up Sir Brandemere unto the horse whence he had fallen, so that he lay across the saddle. Then, taking both horses by the bridles, the Red Knight led them straight back across the bridge, and so into his castle. And as soon as he entered into the castle, the portcullis thereof was immediately closed behind him, and the drawbridge was raised. Nor did he pay any heed whatever, either to me or to the squire Pontefart. But he departed, leaving us without any word of cheer. Nor do I now know whether my husband, Sir Brandemere, is living or dead, or what hath befallen him. And as the lady spake these words, lo, the tears fell again down her face in great abundance. Then Sir Pellias was very much moved with compassion, wherefore he said, Lady, thy case is, indeed, one of exceeding sorrowfulness, and I am greatly grieved for thee. And indeed, I would fain aid thee to all the extent that is in my power. So, if thou wilt lead me to where is this bridge, and that grimly castle of which thou speakest, I make thee my vow that I will essay to the best of my endeavour to learn of the whereabouts of thy good knight, and as to what hath befallen him. Sir, said the lady, I am very much beholden unto thee for thy good will. Yet thou mayest not hope for success shouldest thou venture to undertake so grave an adventure as that, without either arms or armour for to defend thyself. For consider how grievously that Red Knight hath served my husband, Sir Brandemere, taking no consideration as to his lack of arms or defence. Wherefore it is not likely that he will serve thee any more courteously. And to the lady's words Parcenet also lifted up a great voice, bidding Sir Pellias not to be so unwise as to do this that he was minded to do. And so did Pontefart, the squire, also call out upon Sir Pellias that he should not do this thing, but that he should at least take arms to himself ere he entered upon this adventure. But to all that they said, Sir Pellias replied, Stay me not in that which I would do, for I will tell you all that I have several times undertaken adventures, even more perilous than this, and yet I have scaped with no great harm to myself. Nor would he listen to anything that the lady and the damsel might say, but, arising from that place, he aided the lady and the damsel to mount their palfreys. Then mounting his own steed, and the squire and the pages having mounted their steeds, the whole party immediately departed from that place. So they journeyed for a great distance through the forest, the squire, Pontefart, directing them how to proceed in such a way as should bring them by and by to the castle of the Red Knight. So at last they came to a more open place in that wilderness, where was a steep and naked hill before them. And when they had reached to the top of that hill, they perceived beneath them a river, very turbulent and violent. Likewise they saw that the river was spanned by a bridge, exceedingly straight and narrow, and that upon the farther side of the bridge and of the river there stood a very strong castle with 7 tall towers. Moreover, the castle and the towers were built up upon the rocks, very lofty and high, so that it was hard to tell where the rocks ceased and the walls began, wherefore the towers and the walls appeared to be altogether one rock of stone. Then the squire, Pontefract, pointed with his finger and said, Sir Knight, yonder is the castle of the Red Knight, and into it he bare Sir Brandemire after he had been so grievously wounded. Then Sir Pellias said unto the lady, Lady, I will presently inquire as to thy husband's welfare. Therewith he set spurs to his horse and rode down the hill toward the bridge with great boldness. And when he had come nigher to the bridge, lo, the portcullis of the castle was lifted, and the drawbridge was let fall with a great noise and tumult. And straightway there issued forth from out of the castle a knight, clad all in armour and accoutrements of red. And this knight came forward with great speed toward the bridge's head. Then when Sir Pellias saw him approaching so threateningly, he said unto those who had followed him down the hill, Stand fast where ye are, and I will go forth to bespeak this knight, and inquire into the matter of that injury which he hath done unto Sir Brandemire. Upon this the squire, Pontefract, said unto him, Stay, Sir Knight, thou wilt be hurt. But Sir Pellias said, Not so, I shall not be hurt. So he went forth very boldly upon the bridge, and when the Red Knight saw him approach, he said, Ha! Who art thou who darest come thus upon my bridge? Unto him Sir Pellias made reply, It matters not who I am, but thou art to know, thou discourteous knight, that I am come to inquire of thee where thou hast disposed of that good knight Sir Brandemire, and to ask of thee why thou didst entreat him so grievously a short time since. At this the Red Knight fell very full of wrath. Aha, he cried vehemently, that thou shalt presently learn to thy great sorrow, for as I have served him, so I shall quickly serve thee, so that in a little while I shall bring thee unto him. Then thou mayest ask him whatsoever thou dost list. But seeing that thou art unarmed and without defence, I would not do thee any bodily ill, wherefore I demand of thee that thou shalt presently surrender thyself unto me. Otherwise it will be very greatly to thy pain and sorrow, if thou compellest me to use force for to constrain thy surrender. Then Sir Pellias said, What? Wouldst thou thus assail a knight who is altogether without arms or defence as I am? And then the Red Knight said, Assuredly I shall do so, if thou dost not immediately yield thyself unto me. Then, quoth Pellias, thou art not fit to be dealt with, as beseemeth a tried knight. Wherefore, should I encounter thee, thy overthrow must be of a sort as may shame any belted knight who weareth golden spurs. Thereupon he cast about his eyes for a weapon to fit his purpose, and he beheld that a certain huge stone was loose upon the coping of the bridge. Now this stone was of such a size that 5 men of usual strength could hardly lift it. But Sir Pellias lifted it forth from its place with great ease, and raising it with both hands, he ran quickly toward that knight, and flung the rock at him with much force. And the stone smote the Red Knight upon the middle of the shield, and drave it back upon his breast with great violence. And the force of the blow drave the knight backwards from his saddle, so that he fell down to the earth from his horse with a terrible tumult, and lay upon the bridge like one who was altogether dead. And when they within the castle who looked forth therefrom saw that blow, and when they beheld the overthrow of the Red Knight, they lifted up their voices in great lamentation, so that the outcry thereof was terrible to hear. But Sir Pellias ran with all speed to the fallen knight, and set his knee upon his breast. And he unlaced his helmet and lifted it. And he beheld that the face of the knight was strong and comely, and that he was not altogether dead. So when Sir Pellias saw that the Red Knight was not dead, and when he perceived that he was about to recover his breath from the blow that he had suffered, he drew that knight's miscordia from its sheath and set the point to his throat, so that when the Red Knight awoke from his swoon, he beheld death in the countenance of Sir Pellias and in the point of the dagger. So when the Red Knight perceived how near death was to him, he besought Sir Pellias for mercy, saying, Spare my life unto me. Whereunto Sir Pellias said, Who art thou? And the knight said, I am hight Sir Adrasack, surnamed of the Seven Towers. Then Sir Pellias said to him, What hast thou done unto Sir Brandemere, and how doth it fare with that good knight? And the Red Knight replied, He is not so seriously wounded as you suppose. Now when Sir Brandemere's lady heard this speech, she was greatly exalted with joy, so that she smote her hands together, making great cry of thanksgiving. But Sir Pellias said, Now tell me, Sir Adrasack, hast thou other captives beside that knight, Sir Brandemere, at that castle? To which Sir Adrasack replied, Sir knight, I will tell thee truly, there are in my castle 21 other captives besides him, to wit 18 knights and squires of degree, and 3 ladies. For I have defended this bridge for a long time, and all those who have undertaken to cross it, those have I taken captive, and held for ransom. Wherefore I have taken great wealth, and gained great estate thereby. Then Sir Pellias said, Thou art soothly a wicked and discourteous knight, so to serve travellers that come thy way, and I would do well for to slay thee where thou liest. But since thou hast besought mercy of me, I will grant it unto thee, though I will do so only with great shame unto thy knighthood. Moreover, if I spare thee thy life, there are several things which thou must perform. First, thou must go unto Queen Guinevere at Camelot, and there must thou say unto her that the knight who left her unarmed hath taken thy armor from thee, and hath armed himself therewith for to defend her honour. Second, thou must confess thy faults unto King Arthur as thou hast confessed them unto me, and thou must beg his pardon for the same, craving that he, in his mercy, shall spare thy life unto thee. These are the things that thou must perform. To this Sir Adrasack said, Very well, these things do I promise to perform if thou wilt spare my life. Then Sir Pellias permitted him to arise, and he came and stood before Sir Pellias. And Sir Pellias summoned the squire, Pontefract, unto him. And he said, Take thou this knight's armor from off his body, and put it upon my body, as thou knowest how to do. And Pontefract did as Sir Pellias bade him. For he unarmed Sir Adrasack, and he clothed Sir Pellias in Sir Adrasack's armor, and Sir Adrasack stood ashamed before them all. Then Sir Pellias said unto him, Now take me into thy castle, that I may there liberate those captives that thou so wickedly holdest as prisoners. And Sir Adrasack said, It shall be done as thou dost command. Thereupon he went all together unto the castle, and into the castle, which was an exceedingly stately place. And there they beheld a great many servants and attendants, and these came at the command of Sir Adrasack, and bowed themselves down before Sir Pellias. Then Sir Pellias bade Sir Adrasack for to summon the keeper of the dungeon. And Sir Adrasack did so. And Sir Pellias commanded the keeper that he should conduct them unto the dungeon, and the keeper bowed down before him in obedience. Now when they had come to that dungeon, they beheld it to be a very lofty place and exceedingly strong. And there they found Sir Brandemere, and those others of whom Sir Adrasack had spoken. But when that sorrowful lady perceived Sir Brandemere, she ran unto him with great voice of rejoicing, and embraced him, and wept over him. And he embraced her, and wept, and altogether forgot his hurt in the joy of beholding her again. And in the several apartments of that part of the castle there were in all 18 knights and squires, and 3 ladies besides Sir Brandemere. Moreover, among those knights were 2 from King Arthur's court, to wit, Sir Brandile and Sir Mador de la Porte. Whereupon those beholding that it was Sir Pellias who had liberated them, came to him and embraced him with great joy, and kissed him upon either cheek. And all those who were liberated made great rejoicing, and gave Sir Pellias such praise and acclaim that he was greatly contented therewith. Then when Sir Pellias beheld all those captives who were in the dungeon, he was very wroth with Sir Adrasack. Wherefore he turned unto him and said, Begone, Sir Knight, for to do that penance which I imposed upon thee to perform. for I am very greatly displeased with thee, and fear me lest I should repent me of my mercy to thee. Thereupon Sir Adrasak turned him away, and he immediately departed from that place. And he called to him his squire, and he took him and rode away to Camelot, for to do that penance which he had promised Sir Pellias to do. Then after he was gone, Sir Pellias and those captives, whom he had liberated, went through the divers parts of the castle, and there they found 13 chests of gold and silver money, and 4 caskets of jewels, very fine and of great brilliancy, all of which treasure had been paid in ransom by those captives who had aforetime been violently held prisoners at that place. And Sir Pellias ordained that all those chests and caskets should be opened, and when those who were there looked therein, the hearts of all were wonderfully exalted with joy at the sight of that great treasure. Then Sir Pellias commanded that all the treasure of gold and silver should be divided into 19 equal parts, and when it had been so divided, he said, Now, let each of you who have been held captive in this place take for his own 1 part of that treasure as a recompense for those sorrows which he hath endured. Moreover, to each of the ladies who had been held as captives in that place he gave a casket of jewels, saying unto her, Take thou this casket of jewels as a recompense for that sorrow which thou hast suffered. And unto Sir Brandimere's lady he gave a casket of jewels for that which she had endured. But when those who were there beheld that Sir Pellias reserved no part of that great treasure for himself, they all cried out upon him, Sir Knight, how is this? Behold, thou hast set aside no part of this treasure for thyself. Then Sir Pellias made answer, You are right, I have not so. For it needs not that I take any of this gold and silver, or any of these jewels, for myself. For behold, ye have suffered much at the hands of Sir Adrasak, wherefore ye should receive recompense therefor. But I have suffered naught at his hands, wherefore I need no such recompense. Then were they all astonished at his generosity, and gave him great praise for his largeness of heart, and all those knights vowed unto him fidelity until death. Then, when all these things were accomplished, Sir Brandemere implored all who were there that they could come with him unto his castle, so that they might refresh themselves with a season of mirth and good faring. And they all said that they would go with him, and they did go. And at the castle of Sir Brandemere there was great rejoicing with feasting and jousting for 3 days. And all who were there loved Sir Pellias with an astonishing love, because of that collar of emeralds and opals and of gold. Yet no one knew the virtue of that collar, nor did Sir Pellias know of it. So Sir Pellias abided at that place for 3 days. And when the 4th day was come, he arose betimes in the morning, and bade saddle his horse, and the palfrey of the damsel Parcenet, and the horses of their pages. Then, when all those who were there saw that he was minded to depart, they besought him not to go. But Sir Pellias said, Stay me not, for I must go. Then came to him those 2 knights of King Arthur's court, Sir Brandiles and Sir Mador de la Porte, and they besought him that he would let them go with him upon that adventure. And at first Sir Pellias forbade them, but they besought him the more, so at last he was fain to say, Ye shall go with me. So he departed from that place with his company, and all those who remained gave great sorrow that he had gone away. And I think we will stop there for today. Next time we will continue with Sir Pellias' story, but in the meantime, be sure to like and subscribe, and follow me on any of these social media platforms, including over on Patreon. Patrons get videos early, their name in the credits, and other bonuses. This has been Classical Titerature. Thanks for watching.